Outside the seaside villa in Charleston, the night wind rustled through rows of palm trees, the scent of saltwater blending into the air. A drizzle fell, each drop clinging to the glass windows like faint scratches. A warm, golden light spilled across the cream-colored walls in the spacious nursery. Just 2 years old, Isla Grant was crying until her voice turned hoarse. Her sobs echoed off the high ceiling, reverberating through the house like a frantic heartbeat. Elena Torres sat on the soft fur rug, cradling the child. One hand supported her neck, the other gently stroked her tiny back. "Shh, mi cielo, mamá está aquí." Her voice was low, humming an old lullaby from her mother, a sound carrying the warm flavor of distant memories from a small apartment in Texas. Isla gradually shifted from wailing to soft hiccups, her flushed face pressed against Elena's chest, her tiny hand clutching the edge of the sweater as if afraid someone might tear her away at any moment. The door burst open. Alexander Grant entered like a gust of cold wind. His white shirt was rumpled, his tie loosened, and his face was tense. His steel blue eyes swept across the scene before him and froze. "What the hell are you doing?" His voice was as sharp as a blade. Elena startled, but held Isla tighter. "She wouldn't sleep. I was just—" Alexander cut her off, striding forward, the sound of his polished shoes heavy against the wooden floor. "Let go." Elena shook her head, shoulders instinctively curling to shield the child. "She just calmed down." "You're going to." Alexander's strong hands pulled Isla from Elena's arms. The movement was so swift and decisive that Elena's breath caught in her chest. In that instant, Isla screamed as if torn from the only safe place she knew. Her piercing cry filled the room, small hands flailing in the air, desperately searching for that familiar hold. Alexander bent down, pressing his cheek to his daughter's, whispering, "Shh, Daddy's here." But Isla cried harder, her face reddening, breath breaking into jagged gasps. Each sob felt like a knife slicing through the air. Alexander looked at her, then glanced at Elena, whose gaze held no fear, only unwavering resolve. Elena spoke, her voice low but firm. "Give her back to me. Now. She's scared. And you're making it worse." The air was taut, like a violin string pulled to its limit. Alexander's eyes were icy, but deep within them flickered something: hesitation, confusion, almost surrender. Slowly, he handed Isla back. When she was back in Elena's arms, Isla curled up instantly, cheek pressed to her chest, as if reclaiming the warmth she knew. Her cries faded to minor hiccups, and in less than 30 seconds, she had sunk into heavy sleep, her tiny hand still gripping Elena's sweater. Elena sat on the rug, gently rocking, lips moving with the lullaby. Alexander stood there, unmoving, his eyes as if witnessing something beyond his control. Outside, the rain still fell, but inside the room, everything settled into stillness. Only the steady breathing of a sleeping child remained, and two adults facing an undeniable truth. The little girl needed nothing except these arms. Early sunlight streamed through the villa's expansive windows the next morning, casting a golden hue across the kitchen. The scent of freshly roasted coffee lingered in the air, blending with the distant sound of waves crashing on the beach. Elena walked in with Isla still drowsy in her arms. Last night, the little girl slept peacefully until morning, without waking once. Everyone in the house had noticed. At the head of the long dining table, Alexander sat upright, his tie still slightly askew, the coffee in front of him untouched. He glanced briefly at Elena as she passed, but his gaze no longer held the sharp edge of the night before. It was more like someone observing a mystery. Did she sleep well? His voice was low, neither commanding nor thoroughly inquiring. Elena gave a slight nod. "Perfectly. Ever since she was in my arms." Her tone was calm, but each word landed on the table like a quiet, deliberate tap. Alexander said nothing, only turned his eyes toward Isla, who had now lifted her head, rubbed her eyes, then nestled back into Elena's chest. When he reached out a hand, Isla subtly turned away and clung to Elena even tighter. For a moment, Alexander froze. There was a flicker of emotion in his eyes, part envy, part surprise, and a faint, inexplicable ache. Breakfast passed in silence. But when Elena rose to take Isla for a walk in the garden, the longtime housekeeper, Mrs. Hathaway, leaned toward Alexander and whispered, "She only sleeps when she's with her." You may not like it, but that's the truth. Those words lingered in Alexander's mind like an ink stain that would not fade. The second night, Elena placed Isla in her crib, pulling the soft blanket to her chest. She stepped toward the door, ready to close it, when the crying began weak at first, then quickly breaking into gasping sobs. Mrs. Hathaway rushed in first, Alexander close behind. He picked his daughter up, whispering to her, but the more he tried, the more she squirmed. His voice grew softer, more pleading, but still, it didn't work. Elena returned. No words were exchanged, but the look Alexander gave her this time was different, an unspoken, reluctant acceptance. He handed Isla over. It took only seconds. The crying vanished. Isla buried her face into Elena's neck, breathing steadily as though nothing could unsettle her again. The third night. Alexander did not enter the room. He stood in the hallway, listening to his daughter's faint lullaby and soft little sighs. Resting his forehead against the doorframe, he stayed silent. When Elena finally stepped out, he spoke only one sentence. I owe you an apology. Elena stood tall, showing neither triumph nor weakness. For the first night, he nodded. For what I said, and how I said it. I was wrong. She met his gaze directly. Isla doesn't care about money or reputation. She needs to feel safe. He replied quietly, his voice almost breaking. I know. And it seems I'm not the only one who needs that. Elena said nothing. She left Alexander alone in the long hallway, where the warm yellow light cast his shadow into a solitary figure. On Saturday afternoon, the skies over Charleston were gray, the wind from the ocean carrying a briny scent and a chill of damp air. Isla slept soundly in the rocking chair in the nursery, while Elena sat beside her, eyes fixed on a book but mind drifting elsewhere. Suddenly, old voices rose in her head, sounds that cut into her memory, like shards of broken glass. You're not family. Don't touch my things. Keep your hands away from my child. She had heard those words enough times to know them by heart. As a child, Elena had lived in a run-down boarding house in San Antonio. Her mother worked 2 jobs, washing dishes at a restaurant and cleaning offices at night. Elena often followed her to work, learning how to stay silent, never touch anything, never ask, and never draw attention. When her mother died of heart disease, Elena was just 17. She moved in with a distant aunt, and there, the knife-like words kept coming. You're just a freeloader. Don't dream of anything more. Elena learned to shrink into herself and not ask for anything. But that also meant she knew all too well what it felt like to be treated as invisible. That night, Alexander returned late. The drizzle had left his hair slightly damp, and his coat was speckled with raindrops. As he passed the living room, he saw Elena sitting on the floor, Isla lying on her stomach, sucking her thumb, her eyes half closed as she drifted towards sleep. He stood in the doorway, silent. Elena gently patted Isla's back, her gaze distant. Alexander realized it wasn't the look of someone simply babysitting, but of someone trying to hold on to something fragile, afraid that letting go would mean losing it forever. He spoke up. You're not sleeping? Elena startled slightly, then replied, It's fine. I'm used to staying awake to watch over someone's sleep. Alexander frowned. Sounds like you've been doing that for a long time. Elena gave a small smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. Pretty much my whole life. But it's not always something people thank you for. He almost asked more, but Isla stirred, pressing her cheek against Elena's chest. The peace of that moment was something he didn't want to break. Later that night, in the kitchen, as Elena was making herself a cup of tea, Mrs. Hathaway entered, lowering her voice. The master isn't used to letting people into his life. But you're not like the others before you. Elena met her chaze, calm yet deep. I'm not here to change him. I'm here for Isla. Mrs. Hathaway nodded, but before leaving, she added, Sometimes, change begins in the place you least expect. Elena stood there, the hot tea in her hand, with a truth she dared not speak aloud. Isla didn't just need her. She needed Isla too, in a way she had never realized before. Sunday afternoon, gray clouds stretched across the Charleston sky, signaling a heavy storm on its way. In Alexander Grant's spacious office, the glass wall faced the ocean, where waves broke in steady, low-thudding rhythms like a deep heartbeat. Elena stepped in to find him standing by his desk, flipping through a stack of files. Beside him, his laptop was open to a vibrant, colorful design interface. Isla was napping in the next room, leaving the atmosphere unusually quiet. Alexander looked up, motioning for her to come closer. "I want to show you something." Elena approached, her eyes drifting to the screen. A mobile app design filled the display, simple icons, a warm color palette, and in the upper corner the words, "Harbor, a safe harbor for single mothers." She frowned slightly. "What is this?" Resting his hand on the desk, Alexander's voice was deep but slower than usual. "A project I've been nurturing since Isla was born. A platform that provides legal aid, counseling, childcare, all in one place. But my team, mostly men, is brilliant at tech, but they have no idea what it's like to raise a child alone." Elena stayed quiet for a few seconds, then asked softly, "And you think I do?" Alexander's gaze locked on hers without wavering. "I think you know what it feels like to be left behind. And that makes you the most qualified person to help me finish this." Elena crossed her arms, tilting her head in half-skepticism. "What do you want me to do? Grab a broom and sweep code?" The corner of Alexander's mouth curved a rare, faint smile. "Please give me the truth. What it's really like out there, the things someone like me would never see. If you agree, you won't just be an employee in this house anymore. You'll be my advisor." A moment of hesitation. Outside, thunder rolled and rain began tapping against the glass. Elena turned toward the sea, where waves shattered into white foam. She knew this was a turning point and a dangerous line to cross. "If I agree," she said slowly, "then we work on trust, not just when it's convenient for you. No hiding, no dismissing what I say." Alexander nodded, this time without a trace of sarcasm. "Agreed. We start today." Elena left the office, but as she passed, Mrs. Hathaway caught a glimpse of her eyes. They no longer held only guarded caution, but also the spark of someone who had just seen a new door swing open, even if beyond it lay an ocean whose depths she could not yet measure. Thursday morning, the Charleston sky was an uncanny shade of blue, the ocean shimmering as if layered with gold. Elena was helping Isla into a pale blue dress, sprinkled with tiny daisies inside the villa, adding a star-shaped clip to her soft, curly hair. Isla giggled, wrapping her arms around Elena's neck. "Mia, don't go anywhere, okay?" Elena smiled gently. "Sweetheart, where would I go? I'm right here with you." The doorbell rang. The calm air instantly shifted. From the living room came Mrs. Hathaway's voice. "Mr. Grant, there's a visitor." Alexander appeared in the hallway, his expression tightening as if he'd just heard unwelcome news. Elena instinctively carried Isla downstairs and froze when she reached the grand foyer. The woman at the door, Clara Monroe, is tall and elegant, wearing a caramel-colored coat, her dark brown hair curled to perfection. She looked as though she had stepped out of an autumn magazine spread, but in her eyes lingered hesitation, almost regret. "Alexander." Clara's voice was soft, but it cut through the silence. Elena stood still, her heartbeat quickening as Clara's gaze found Isla. 1 second, 2. Then Clara stepped forward, offering a tentative smile. "You've grown so much. Can Mommy?" Alexander glanced at Elena before gently lifting Isla from her arms and placing her into Clara's. The shattering moment. At first, Isla just stared, bewildered, but then her lips trembled, the soft whimper turning into sobs, then into a desperate wail. Clara fumbled, trying to soothe her. "Shh, it's me, Mommy." But Isla turned away, arms reaching Elena, eyes brimming with tears. "Mia." Elena stepped forward, instinct outweighing etiquette. She took Isla back, cradling her close. Within a few breaths, the cries faded into soft hiccups, warmth settling between them again. Clara stood frozen, her empty hands hovering uselessly. Her voice cracked. "She doesn't recognize me." Elena lifted her gaze, her tone low but deliberate. "She recognizes the one who stayed." The air froze. Alexander said nothing, while Clara blinked quickly to keep a tear from falling. A brief goodbye. Clara slipped her handbag over her shoulder, turning to Alexander. "I thought it would be different. But maybe you already have your family." She looked at Elena again, this time without scrutiny, but with something closer to acceptance tinged with envy. Take care of her, the way you always have. Then Clara stepped out, the sound of her heels dissolving into the ocean wind. Alexander watched her go, his shoulders weighted. Isla clung to Elena's sweater, whispering into the warmth between them. Mia, don't go. At that moment, Elena knew she had just become the center of a quiet battle between a past that wanted its place back and a present she could not afford to lose. 3 days after Clara's departure, heavy rain swept over Charleston. The ocean wind slammed against the villa's glass windows, each long whistle sounding as if it meant to strip away everything inside. Elena sat in the nursery, her laptop on a small table, while Isla played with building blocks beside her. A soft knock sounded, and Alexander appeared in the doorway. Today, he wore a charcoal shirt and carried 2 steaming paper cups of coffee. Are you free? I want to discuss something. Elena glanced at Isla. If you're talking company business, I'm not sure You're the one I need for this, Alexander interrupted, placing a cup in front of her. An unexpected invitation. He opened his laptop and turned the screen toward her. Displayed was the project plan for the Harbor app, along with a meeting schedule at the New York headquarters for the following week. I want you to come with me. Elena blinked. To New York? For what? Leaning an elbow on the desk, Alexander's voice was direct. To tell the development team the things I don't know. To help them understand why this app isn't just something on paper, it will change lives. You won't be a house staff member anymore. You'll be the director of community development. Elena gave a short, almost mocking laugh. You want me to drop the cleaning rag and put on a blazer? Alexander tilted his head, gaze steady. I want you to stay exactly who you are and bring that to the table. A moment of choice. Elena was silent for a long moment. Outside, rain pounded hard against the glass. Isla dropped her block and crawled over, leaning against Elena's leg as if seeking an anchor. Elena gently smoothed Isla's hair, then looked up. If I agree, we work as partners. Not me speaking and you ignoring. Alexander nodded. We start today. The turning point. Passing by in the hallway, Mrs. Hathaway caught sight of Elena and Alexander sitting close together before the laptop, Isla playing between them. She smiled quietly to herself. She knew the line between employer and employee had just been erased, not with a contract, but with a decision they both understood would change everything. New York lay under a cold, ashen sky, as if dusted with frost. The headquarters of Grant Technologies loomed over the street, its glass facade reflecting the heavy clouds pressing down from above. On the second day of the business trip, Elena was caught up in a team meeting about new features for the Harbor app. Isla had been left in the care of Carla, Alexander's assistant, in the 22nd floor office. The moment she disappeared, just as the meeting ended, Carla burst into the conference room, her face pale. Elena. Isla. She's not with me anymore. Elena shot to her feet. What? Carla stammered. I just turned away to take a call. Not even a minute. And she was gone. Alexander arrived at that exact moment, his voice dropping into steel. Lock all entry points. Alert security now. The desperate search. Radios crackled as security personnel fanned out through the building. Elena ran down hallways, throwing open doors, calling Isla's name until her voice frayed. 15 minutes passed like hours until a voice came through the radio. Found her. Rooftop. Not alone. The scene above. Elena rushed into the elevator, Alexander close behind. When the rooftop door swung open, cold wind slapped their faces. Near the railing, Isla stood beside a man, Victor Hale, the company's chief financial officer. Victor crouched down, hands resting casually on his knees, wearing a smile that feigned innocence. She wandered off. I just kept her here until someone came. Elena said nothing, striding forward to scoop Isla into her arms. The little girl clung to her neck, burying her face as if to vanish entirely. Alexander stepped closer, voice like ice. Victor, the rooftop is locked. You need an access code to get up here. Explain. Victor shrugged, still smiling faintly. Someone left the code lying around in an office. Don't lie. Elena's voice cut sharp as a blade. She didn't find her way up here on her own, and she doesn't know how to punch in a code. A shadow of suspicion. Victor merely shrugged again, straightening up. Think what you want. I've got nothing to hide. He left behind the faint scent of cigarette smoke, tangled in the cold wind. Alexander watched him go, his jaw tight. Elena stepped back into the elevator with Isla pressed against her, her heart still pounding. One thought rang clear in her mind: this wasn't an accident. It was a warning. 3 days after the rooftop incident, the headquarters of Grant Technologies felt strung with an invisible wire pulled taut. The Isla incident rumor hadn't leaked beyond the company, but none of the executives could maintain their usual air of composure. Elena sat in Alexander's office, a small black USB drive resting between them. It's all here. Security camera footage, elevator access logs, and even emails he sent from his account. Alexander took it, plugging it into his laptop. On the screen, clear footage appeared: Victor entering the rooftop access code, followed by an audio recording of his voice on an internal call. If this app fails, the board will lose faith in him. I'll take control. Alexander raised an eyebrow. How did you get this? Elena answered. I asked the right person. A subtle nod to a maintenance staff member who owed Mrs. Hathaway a big favor, and quietly pulled the data. The boardroom. The meeting took place in the 40th floor executive room. The expansive windows looked out over a cold Manhattan morning, but no one cared about the view. Victor sat at one end of the table, feigning calm. When the chairman asked Alexander to present, he turned the main screen toward the board and pressed play. The faint tap of someone's fingers on the table cut through the silence as Victor's figure appeared, entering the rooftop code. Then came the audio, his voice echoing in the room. I'll take control. Victor's face paled, but he tried to push back. This is a misunderstanding. The footage could be doctored. And the call, cutting the knot. From her seat at the back, Elena spoke up. We have the originals directly from the security system, with integrity verification. We can bring in an independent forensic team right now. A low murmur rippled through the room. The chairman's voice was cold. Victor Hale, you are immediately suspended from your position, pending legal investigation. Leave the building. Victor rose, casting a thin, wire-like smile at Elena and Alexander. You'll regret this. He walked out, the door closing behind him, leaving the room heavy with tense silence. After the battle, Alexander turned to Elena. If it weren't for you, this would have gone very differently. Elena didn't smile. This is just the beginning. Someone like Victor doesn't disappear quietly. Alexander gave a slow nod. In his eyes now, caution and resolve had fused into a weapon, and Elena knew the game had just moved into a new round. One more dangerous, but impossible to walk away from. The news of Victor's suspension had barely begun to settle when another storm broke. On Monday morning, when Elena stepped into the lobby of Grant Technologies, every eye turned toward her. Some people whispered. Others discreetly raised their phones to snap photos. Mrs. Hathaway called her immediately. Elena, don't read the news. Don't check the internet. Just get to Mr. Grant's office right now. But it was too late. On the large digital screen in the lobby, the morning entertainment feed was running. Alexander Grant, tech billionaire, rumored to be living with his private employee and daughter. Accompanying it was a slightly blurred but unmistakable shot of Elena carrying Isla as she stepped out of Alexander's car in front of the Charleston villa. In the office, Alexander stood by the window, phone in hand, voice cold as steel. Find out who leaked this. Now. Elena closed the door behind her, forcing her voice to stay calm. Where it came from isn't as important as how it affects Isla. Alexander turned, his blue eyes bright with restrained fury. Garbage. They want to turn you into a joke, and Isla into bait. Elena's fists tightened. So what's your plan? Have your lawyers send a warning letter? He shook his head. Number, I'll speak directly. Publicly. The surprise press conference. That afternoon, Alexander appeared in the main lobby, where dozens of reporters were waiting. Flashbulbs strobed, the sound of shutters like a hailstorm. He stood at the podium, looking straight into the cameras. This morning, false rumors about my personal life have spread. Let me be clear once and for all. Elena Torres is not a hidden lover. She is my partner, who helped save the harbor project and protected my daughter. His voice slowed, each word cutting through the air. Isla has only one family, and Elena is part of it. Anyone who comes after her, comes after me. A moment side by side. Elena stood in the background, silent. When Alexander stepped down, reporters crowded forward, shouting questions. One rang out above the rest. "Mr. Grant, do you love her?" Alexander didn't stop walking but reached for Elena's hand in front of everyone and held it. No explanation. No denial. In that moment, Elena knew he had just staked his reputation and name to stand beside her. And that was more dangerous than any corporate battle they'd faced. Nearly a month after the press conference, the Charleston sky burned with streaks of gold and orange from the setting sun. But inside Alexander's office, the air felt dense, like the heavy stillness before a storm. Elena entered to find him at his desk, turning a thick contract over in his hands. "What's going on?" she asked quietly. Alexander looked up, exhaustion in his eyes. "The board has voted. Either I sell my controlling shares to Ashton Group, or they'll use the Victor incident and the recent rumors to force me out." Elena stood still. "Selling the company means you lose all say over Harbor." He nodded. "But if I don't sell, they'll reopen everything, drag you and Isla back into the headlines. This time, there won't be a way out." Between power and family, he rose and walked to the window, where the last light of day clung to the glass. "I've lost one family before. I don't plan to lose another." Elena swallowed hard. "You're saying—" Alexander turned, his gaze steady, no hesitation left. "I'll sell to keep you and Isla safe." She shook her head, stepping closer. "Alexander, you don't have to give up everything for me. Harbor is the child you've raised since Isla was born." He gave a faint smile, but it carried both relief and pain. "Isla is my real daughter. Harbor, if I lose it, I can start again. But if I lose you too, there's nothing left to start with." An ending no one expected. On the signing day, Alexander officially sold most of his shares. The press called it the tech billionaire's retreat from power, but he refused all interviews. A week later, in Charleston, in the living room overlooking the ocean, Elena opened her laptop and smiled at him. "Harbor's not dead. I've registered a nonprofit, Harbor Foundation. Now we don't need a board to help people." Alexander stared at her for a long moment before breaking into his first genuine laugh in weeks. "You just saved Harbor. And me." Closing and opening. That night, with Isla sleeping peacefully in Elena's arms, Alexander stood in the doorway, his expression softened. "The door you opened that day," he said quietly, "led me to a family." Elena answered only with a slight nod. Outside, the waves kept their steady rhythm against the shore, the heartbeat of a new beginning, where power no longer mattered most, but the people worth giving it up for did.